Yep.
Hi.
I'm Melissa.
Welcome.
Thank you.
No one yet.
No one yet.
Not yet.
So roll.
Are we rolling?
Yep.
Oh, all right. Okay, so I'd like to call to order the May 1st, 2025 meeting of the Village of Homewood Appearance Commission. Roll call, please.
Member Banks,
Present.
member Shepke,
Present.
member Preston. Member Quirk.
Here.
Member Club,
Here.
member Gonser,
Here.
Chair Ryder.
Here. All right, before we get rolling, I'd like to introduce the newest member of our commission, Melissa Gonser. Welcome. Can you
Thank
tell
you.
us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I was born and raised in Homewood, grew up here, went to Heather Hill, Parker, and HF. Stayed in the area, went to school in Wisconsin, and then lived in Indianapolis for a while, and I just recently came back within the last couple years with my daughter. She's 4, and we stayed with my mom until I found a place to live, and we just moved right down the street a year ago in January.
Perfect. Welcome back. We're
Thank
glad
you.
you're back and involved.
Thank you. Me too.
Excellent. Yeah.
It's exciting.
All right, cool. All right, next order of business is to finally approve the minutes from the November 13th, 2024 meeting of the Appearance Commission. Are there any changes, adjustments, anything that anybody has, Member Clark?
No, my memory doesn't go back that far.
Member Clark. Member Shefke. Were you on the commission? No, okay, all right, and I have none. And you were
I wasn't
on
involved.
commission, and I have none either. So do I have a motion to approve the minutes from November 13th, 2024 meeting of the Appearance Commission?
So
I second.
All right, roll call, please.
member Banks. Member Shepke.
Aye.
Member Quirk.
Aye.
Member Club,
Aye.
member Gonser.
Abstain.
Abstain.
Yep. And Chair Ryder.
Yes.
All
Aye.
right, they are. official.
All right.
6 months after the-
Holy mackerel. All right, the next order of business is to approve the minutes from the March 6th, 2025 meeting of the Appearance Commission. Are there any changes, additions, anything that anybody has? Commissioner Banks.
No comments.
All right, Commissioner Sheffield, none. Quirk. None. Commissioner Clark.
I was absent.
You were, you were absent.
Yes.
So we can do this. You weren't here yet.
That
So,
was-
yeah. Yeah, I have none. So, okay, could I have a motion to approve the minutes of the March 6th, 2025 meeting of the Appearance Commission? Second. All righty, roll call, please.
Member Banks.
Aye.
Member Shepke.
Aye.
Member Quirk.
Aye.
Member Club,
Abstain.
member Gonser,
Abstained.
Chair Ryder.
Aye.
I got a question.
Your question is your question, okay, is it about minutes?
Yes.
Oh, well, we already voted on that, but go ahead. Sure, why not?
So in the minutes that we just approved, on page 12. I guess I'll let you know on this question mostly. It says, Assistant Director Schumer noted that the goal is to move some sign variance applications received by the village into a modifications review through the CSP process. Member Quirk asked if there are opportunities to incorporate maintenance standards and other standards such as landscaping into the process of approving a CSP. I think the answer would, and then Angela said no. And I looked at the proposal that we have here, and I may well have missed it, but I didn't see anything that incorporated that thought, which has been something that we've discussed frequently. right? It's having some sort of a maintenance type of function for the, I'm not sure exactly what.
Maintenance regarding what?
Signs, landscape, a whole bunch of other things.
It's in there. It's.
Is the question about the content of the minutes or about the incorporation of what you said into the text of the sign code?
Yeah, because that's,
Okay.
okay, so that would be in a different,
Let's see.
that would be when we're talking about the sign code, not the minutes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
so
there was-
we'll wait, we'll hold that thought, and when we get to that. We'll go over it then, because it doesn't sound like it's part of the minutes.
It's not.
It's not, so, okay, so, because I have a couple things too, but we'll get into that. So there's gonna be no need to revote or anything.
I don't think we have to revote.
No, because that's not
No.
regarding,
We can talk about it with the comprehensive sign plan.
Right. I have a few things too, so, yeah. All right, that done, is there anybody on Zoom watching us? Okay, so no public comments. All right, so we can get to the regular business then. A public hearing. Public hearing for case 25-01, the village sign code update. For which you guys have put in an incredible amount of work, and we appreciate that.
Yeah.
No.
Yes.
Good evening, once again, this will be the fourth presentation of the sign code here, but we've reached the meeting where we can start to consider a recommendation for the village sign code update. So thank you for your continued participation over the course of a year of work to get to this point. Staff really appreciates it. What we want to do this evening, minimize this so it will block the screen. There we go. All right, I'm gonna start here. And pardon the font change here. There's a font format, which is revisions and changes. But so just this presentation will be just a little bit shorter. What we'll mostly do this evening is just discuss some of the changes that were made to the code following the discussions that we've had since January. There were 3 discussions, January, February, and March. So we've incorporated a great deal of that feedback into our ordinance. We'll discuss where those changes are. In your packet, you will see them highlighted in red. Places where the text varies from the original copy that you received for the previous 2 workshops. Then there'll just be an opportunity for general discussion. Questions like the one that Member Quirk was mentioning, we can definitely bring up and have a conversation about between the commission and staff. We'll walk through the final process and then ultimately discuss recommendations. And we'll talk about the options the Appearance Commission has for making a recommendation on this assignment. So why don't we just jump right in and just talk about some of the revisions very quickly. Some of the changes, or the bulk of the changes, were made to commercial signage. So it was where we spent the most time at the second workshop, I believe, which is our latest one, where we went through each sign type. A lot of that feedback has been incorporated into this section on commercial signs. So there were some notable changes. That there were some signs that received additional appearance review requirements. So more signs would go to appearance review. All of our freestanding signs, canopy signs in the downtown districts, anything with an ECM board attached to it, and then those marquee signs, those all now would be Appearance Commission would get appearance review. So when we receive an application for it, it automatically gets an appearance review case that goes forward to you for review. One of the big changes was making electronic board signs, the changing message board signs, a type of sign that could be installed into freestanding signs. So monument signs, pylon signs, kind of directly incorporating the discussion we had on at our February meeting, where we had concerns about how we were regulating those electronic displays on those types of freestanding signs. So we'll talk about that. And then you'll probably see the organization has changed quite a bit. It's alphabetized. And the numbers have changed, the code references have changed. So you'll see that as well. It makes it a little bit easier to thumb through and find what you're looking for. Talked about ECM board signs here. You'll see it moved in the code here. It's a distinct sign type that is now again something that we is a sign, I guess, that's incorporated into a monument or a pylon sign. Our two freestanding sign types. We, as currently written, made it a regulation that no more than 50% of that sign area on those types of signs could be a electronic changing message board sign. And so we don't have giant ECM board signs, but it's a way to still incorporate them into those types of signage. We then also added just a handful of requirements to that general set of requirements that we have for ECM board signs. Angela and I did some research with groups that are doing kind of best practices in these types of signs. And so there's some requirements added, namely requirement for the ability to adjust for brightness and color for the time of day, and then some additional illumination requirements. So those are included in that ECM section. Instructional signs are just broken out more clearly into two distinct sign types. Our freestanding instructional signs, think like a drive-through sign, or a wall-mounted instructional sign, like what you see around certain parts of Homewood Brewing, for example. So, and then just added some clarification after our discussion there, but not a ton of changes there. Marquee signs saw the greatest change of all because we had a pretty lengthy discussion about marquee signs. So there were some changes to how we would regulate height. There were concerns that our 15-foot height requirement was very small for a marquee sign, and that is we should be a little bit more flexible with this type of sign. So regulating that by the zoning district instead for height, rather than again limiting it to the roof line and just in a very small area where it was originally allowed. Eliminating some requirements like it has to be flush to the building. Those requirements we talked about being maybe too onerous, limiting sign creativity and unnecessary. And then just clarified projection and encroachment requirements. And then allowing, I believe in the original code, it said internal only, but having internal or external illumination allowed for those signs. So some changes there that section was coded in red. Monument signs, again, you'll see the changes highlighted in the code. A lot of that was clarification. The main difference was adjusting that the size and height for allowances in the B4 district. We talked about whether our 8-foot sign height and 40-foot square foot area allowance was too small. So we looked at some other codes and came back with something that's a little bit more reflective of other communities that have large commercial corridors and a regulated monument signage. And then we're again more clarity on the setback and where it can be placed, right-of-way encroachments, things like that. And then again, that ECM allowance where the electronic messages can be put into a monument sign were added to that section. And then appearance review is now always required in any zoning district for monuments. Painted wall signs, just clarified requirements. We just talked about some things that needed to be clarified around wall language around wall planes and the size allowance for that. So we clarified that. And allowed a little bit more flexibility and creativity with those signs. Pylon signs, very similar to the monument signs, just clarified those setbacks. Had the size allowances break between the B3 and B4 districts. So now you see a larger sign allowance in that B4 district. Same with height, again, breaking them between the B3 and B4, kind of splitting them a little bit so that you get different scales for different types of commercial districts. Added the prohibitions on right-of-way easement encroachments, just again based on what we want to see when these things come forward for, say, site plan review, things like that. And then again, appearance plan or appearance review always required for those freestanding signs. Then finally, wall signs just had some very minor changes, just changing language we found in the code last time that we wanted to see changed. And then window signs, another large change. Just reducing that allowable area, which we talked about quite a bit at our February workshop, reduced it to 25% overall, 25% for any individual window or transparent area. for permanent and temporary signs.
Could I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Does Kohl's have Sephora below it now on the building?
Mhm.
Did that change the signage size? Because we didn't, Have anything?
It still meets code.
Yep.
it still meets code.
Mhm.
Okay, all right, cool, thanks.
Okay. So, other changes you'll see in the code, before you, we, added and modified our exempt sign types. That some of that was based on discussion and some of that was a discussion with Angela and I as well. Just adding things like real estate signs, clarifying what we mean by those architect contractor signs, making things, just capturing all the sign types we're going to see that we really don't need to be permitting. We don't need to have a permit pulled for every for sale sign for a house that's out there, for example. So, you'll see some new exemptions in there. We clarified, just because we changed those ECM board allowances, we reflected that in the signs for those civic, charitable, and educational institutions. So they're allowed one of those signs with a board, with one of those changing message board signs. It's just so that we don't accidentally make those signs non-conforming again with our code. We're allowing in limited instances, say churches, non-commercial places of assembly, to have those message boards, which are essential for the function of those uses. We added graphics for sign measurements and for different sign types. So you'll see graphics throughout the code, prepared by Hassio Levine. Those draft graphics were added to the code since the last time that we spoke with you. And then again, just alphabetized, reorganized, just made it easier to reference things throughout the entire code. I'm gonna take a break here, just as with previous meetings. There's not a ton more slides, but I did want to offer opportunities for questions, concerns, just around commercial signage, anything that initially stands out, just while it's fresh and has just been shown on the screen.
All right, Commissioner Banks. Work.
I have a very generalized question. That is, the part that you've just gone over is really the part that we get most of our activity on, let's say. You have led us through a long public involvement process. We have experienced that long public involvement process and participated in it. Has anybody else participated in that long public involvement process? We get any other substantive comments from anybody on the village board, let's say, or on the zoning committee, or on members of the general public?
So, generally with this project, we've mostly worked with you since almost all of the reviews related to the content of this code will go before the appearance commission here. Very few cases will touch the planning and zoning commission or village board, so.
But they do have impact on posts, right?
This will go before the planning and zoning commission after you look at it, because it is a text amendment to the zoning code, they're adding it to the zoning code.
And I
I'm
understand
glad
that.
you said that, because I was gonna ask, why do they have to look at this and approve it?
They don't have to look at the content of it, that's your area. They do need to look at whether it should be added to the zoning code.
Okay.
Okay, so my
Thank
question again, certainly. My question again was, did anybody jump up and say, oh, or gee, this is great, or anything like that? I understand that we have to go through a process, in the future. By the way, does the village board have to approve this?
As a text amendment, yep.
But nobody else made any substantive comments.
No, none that we've heard.
No, I mean, we've reviewed this, we've had plenty of questions circulate with staff. In our in-house with departments that'll touch this, we talked about public safety comments last time, right? Of how they want to see window signage, things like that, but.
The board has been aware of it. but-
I'm sorry. Can you say that again, please?
The board is aware of the process, but I haven't had any
Mhm.
comments.
Thank you.
I think Napoleon has included it in village board updates as an upcoming project as well, so they know of its existence, yep.
I think in the Pulse too, it's been in there that we're having.
So it's social media, yep.
Right. It's,
Yeah.
it's been out in public, so nobody can say
Yeah.
that it hasn't been.
Oh,
they haven't
yeah.
had it.
We've
Well, they can say it,
advertised
but-
these meetings.
Yeah, opportunity's been here.
Yep.
But
Okay, cool. Anything else?
No.
Commissioner Fox?
Nope.
I gotta remember this, Commissioner Gonser, again. Okay, thank you. I have none here. I will have some for the next part.
Great,
So, yeah,
great. Well, we
Thank
can
you.
jump in. Also to Member Gonzer, I apologize that you're getting kind of a fire hose for your first, meeting in the Appearance Commission, getting a giant, code
Yeah,
update, which is fairly rare for the Appearance Commission. So, welcome to the party.
I just did it all in at once.
All right, so talking about comprehensive sign program updates. So this is again, one of our, this would be a new procedure. And so it's, one of the most important to nail down details here for this sign code.
are you skipping non-commercial?
So I'm just touching on major sections I'll do one roundup at the end that has all of the other minor changes. But these are just major changes that we saw, and I'm only picking out the sections where we made really large scale changes. I'll mention, again, I kind of have a round robin slide at the end that comes up.
I'm trying to follow this.
Oh, that's okay. It's section 441008.
Yeah, that doesn't help me.
Comprehensive sign program.
Thanks.
Or plans, yeah. Even I can't get my words right. Yep.
All right.
Yep, it's the very red one. It's got, especially on the second page of the ESP.
What is the CSP? Go ahead, I'll find it.
Well, so, I think, you're all familiar, but also especially for member Gonzo, just to quick give an update on.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
On comprehensive sign plans, this would be opportunities for when you have, say, multiple buildings on a site, you have a multitude of users on a site. It's a way to require those sites to have a sign plan that shows how signs across the site will fit together, where signs are allowed to go, not allowed to go, any form standards related to those signs that the developer wishes to put in place. And then again, that would be reviewed by the Appearance Commission as one kind of application, rather than again, what it is right now, where we do it piecemeal, where it's really just the, say, property managers or property owners requirement to, just kind of parse out signage just as they see fit. There's not a real clear plan to that, and oftentimes it'll end up with real conflicts with our sign code over time as more and more signs build up, and there's a lot of challenges with administering that and enforcing our sign code. So a way to clarify all that, a way to make these multi-tenant, multi-building sites easier to enforce and regulate with signage. So we made some changes. This was an area where we spent a lot of time talking last month about changes we might want to see. There were the main changes that were made. We clarified the what the application applies to. I know we had a couple questions go back and forth about, oh, well, what about this site? What about this site? So we tried to make sure that language was very clear. We clarified the purpose of CSP requirements. So we added an extra bullet or two to really gather your feedback and put it in about why we might want to do this, including, I think, some notes about sound design, which I believe was Chair Rymack's comment. And a couple other notes in there that were added just to clarify why we want to do this as a village and how it connects to a public purpose. We changed the required documents, just simplified that for the application, and just made sure they were consistent between the main section on CSPs and then in the zoning procedures page later on, the process for comprehensive sign plans that they match. The biggest change was adding a process for applying for code modifications with standards. There's a new section in there that's written in there with modification standards that are a set of standards where if somebody wants to come to the comprehensive sign code and much like our plan development process, apply for modified signage that is different than what the sign code would otherwise regulate, they have to demonstrate that it meets a set of standards that have public benefit, that has, increases architectural quality, things like that. And those are the standards that the Appearance Commission will use going forward, should this be approved, to evaluate those requests for modifications.
That was section E, right? Correct?
Correct.
Yeah,
Yep.
I saw that. That's, I've got a little smiley face there.
Yeah, and so,
I don't know what that means.
An example of this would be if somebody wants to come with, say, additional signage because their site, they think their site is in a unique location. It doesn't really mean a hardship, but it is a unique, they have a unique opportunity to put more signage that could really help their business. They have to demonstrate that that changed signage that would be, say, more than what our sign code would allow, still meets those standards, those modification standards, and be carefully reviewed by you. So it also gives you some guidance on how to review any request like that that comes forward, instead of just, having to kind of take a shot in the dark on what we're looking at and what we want to see from that. So definitely we'll want to talk about those standards. And then clarify when a CSP will be required for existing developments. So rename that section instead of amortization, which isn't quite the right word for that. It is now just CSPs for existing developments. And then it clarifies based on our conversation last time, what those kind of triggers are where a development would be required to file, or a property owner would be required to file a comprehensive sign plan for their project. So that way it's not just because one small tenant changed their sign, everything has to go to a CSP. We added some clarity to I think it's 3 triggers for that. So that is the changes to the comprehensive sign program. The plans. Comprehensive sign plans.
Cool. Do we want to do questions here?
Sure, now's a good time.
Well, your hand is up, Brian. Go ahead.
Thank you. Under page 57, under modifications. Understand all of these things. But are we, the way I understand this is, we're basically now creating a third category of approval, let's say.
Mhm.
So we've got the things that are sort of normally, in the past, we've had those things that are normally approved according to the rules that we have set out and used for years and years.
Mhm.
Then we've also created this, what's the word? Variance process to, to get around the rules if there is a hardship.
Mhm.
This creates a third category, right?
Correct.
And what does that do to the variance process?
So what that'll do to the variance process is it will respond to, I think, a concern we've had looking at sign variances for the past 2 years or so, which is trying to figure out, is there actually a hardship? Is this somebody asking for modifications to allow certain types of signage, or is this actually responding to a hardship? So sign variances, you'll probably see less of them, just because it was somebody who has to have an issue with, say, the way the existing building is built or something like that, where a sign that would otherwise be allowed, they just can't build. It would allow for, again, modifications to respond to that hardship. The modifications process through the comprehensive sign plan would allow for, again, I would say more discretionary changes. So things that are, again, the desire of the property owner to make a modification to the sign code, to do something other than what the sign code requires, because it meets, and they have to demonstrate it meets certain standards of what we would want to see in that instance.
I would, the variances for something like, on an individual building. So, if they want to make their sign bigger, but where the comprehensive sign plan comes in is it's a larger scope of a project. So it would be looking at a center and they have to plan for all the signs for the center. And then the next person who comes along has to meet that, and they would seek a modification if they want something that doesn't meet it. And so you're looking at it from a larger scale, I think, than a variance,
Mhm.
which would be an individual.
Thank you for that. 2 questions related to that. Can we think of a time when using these standards, that center that you talked about would not be able to get any sign they wanted?
Any sign what?
They wanted.
I think I
Oh,
can,
yeah,
Yeah.
I would say. In most cases, they wouldn't be able to get any sign they wanted because we're
Well,
gonna
I mean, if you
look
look at the first one, Angela, that's pretty wide. I mean, it
Which-
basically says, we could sell more stuff if we had a bigger sign. That's basically what that says.
well,
And I don't disagree with you,
I see.
but that's a pretty wide door. And sort of allows a lot of signs to come through. And maybe that's what
But
we
we
want
can
to do.
always say no,
Say it again.
but we can always say no.
Whoa, I don't know, can we?
Yes,
Yeah, so
Well,
I
I
could,
think that you have to. Well, it says compatible with one or more of the following additional standards, you might wanna look at that. I see
yeah,
what
we
you're saying.
can,
Because this is saying, the way that it's worded is saying. It just has to comply with one of those,
Yeah,
yeah.
well, if it is to comply with number one. Like I say, it's pretty easy to do that.
yeah, so.
And again, I'm not saying, oh, we gotta stop that. But I am saying, let's. That's the way I understand it.
I think it's kind of hard to make it very specific, and because it is something that's meant to be almost like a planned development, which is something in zoning. That's meant to be more flexible, so that you can, maybe one building has a larger sign than it's allowed, but it's consistent throughout, so
Yeah.
I have to think about that one.
Yeah, I mean, there's language that we use with
Okay.
other standards, like no one is binding, for example, and so it allows for. The planning and zoning commission to dialogue between the different standards, when, let's say, special uses, plan developments, variances, we use the language, no one is binding. And that would be maybe something here, but,
I would love to have you think about that.
sure.
Yeah,
Because I think
Yep.
that's something that. Might come up frequently, and I think we ought to have clarity of our thought.
it's a good find.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
And-
Number two, thank you very much.
absolutely.
Number two, is there a process that, when you're talking about a center? It's been something that's vexed me several times. It seems like we tend to deal with the individual merchants of the center. And not the center owner, manager, whatever they are. And it seems like that's the wrong approach for us.
That's, but this would change that.
Mhm.
Yes.
It would, I'm sorry, I missed that part. Where does it say that? Where does it do that?
It would change that, because we have, this says that we're gonna be dealing with the entire center and not the individual tenants.
So the entire center means the owner has to be, well.
Hmm.
The owner, but sometimes they like to send their representative.
Sure,
And I mean, I guess.
I don't mind if they send their representative, I'm sorry.
Sure.
Go ahead.
And we can parse that out, you can have a
But
reference,
they won't be sending one tenant.
right,
They have though, that has happened,
They have in the past.
you're right.
right, and the
see-
goal is to shift away from that with some of these, again, larger centers. And really put the onus on the property owner, as technically our current code does, but it's impossible to enforce because it says. Property owner basically is responsible for dictating the amount of signage, so there's no clarity, no standards for how they do that. So we end up with like the Essence Salon Suite situation where the property owner gives their property owner approval on that signage, for example, right? But it takes up most of the center's signage. And then we have problems down the road where then, say, we may have future tenants that need a sign variance because there's too much signage on the building already. And so this is trying to clarify having that on a tenant by tenant basis. And now where there are new signs added, or one of those triggers are met, I think it's in section F. You will have the property owner is responsible for filing this comprehensive sign plan.
So number 2A, if I can.
Sure.
You guys have already agreed to sort of think about this other one.
Mhm.
So, one that's related to what we were just talking about, and that is, if you remember back to CD1 price cleaners. They had exactly the situation that you're talking about, meaning they came in with a sign. That, that blew out the numbers for their entire row of buildings. And there, what we were dealing with, the one owner of CD1. And we sort of said, okay, we don't want to deal with you, but we never could get a chance to deal with you.
I don't recall the owner being here.
No, the owner was
The owner
here.
was not
Yeah,
here.
that's Silken who's opening up the
Silken owns that whole class. Oh, okay.
Jimmy Johns and the whole thing. Yeah.
At
So,
the time he did too.
Yeah, he was here at this meeting. Yeah,
well, I remember only dealing with. the
either
owner
at this
of
meeting or he
CD1.
was on phone.
I think he was on the phone.
Yeah.
That's why.
Okay.
Anyway,
My second part of that is. When we sort of said, okay, Mr. CD1, you can have your sign. But we want you to talk to the owner of that entire mall. To spruce the place up. Because. It's not that it looks terrible, it just looks extremely plain. There's nothing spruced up about it. And they agreed to do that. And they've done nothing about it. And so. I don't know, I will ask you to think about that.
Yeah.
Because I sure as heck can't think of how you do that. Fix that.
Well, how they fix that is somebody has to go and say, hey, you mentioned you'd spruce it up, can you do something? And that's not necessarily our job, it's the village job. Correct?
Yeah, and I guess I don't think I was here for that case, with the village yet. But when it comes to sprucing up, for example, if it is, say, property maintenance and kind of cleaning up the property, that's one item. But again, it would be very hard if you had, say, the sign case for CD1, you couldn't condition, also you need to go paint the building, you need to go do these other improvements that are unrelated to the sign because.
And we
we're
did not
follow-
do that, we were smart,
Next.
enough to break the chair first.
No, we were.
We didn't do that, but we did say. While we're at this and we're doing this nice thing for you, could you talk to the owner? So we did say, condition it.
Although the owner was on the phone, so he heard us.
Yeah.
I don't recall that, but I would. Accede to your understanding, yes.
I do, I think it was the same situation with Buffalo Wild Wings, but the owner was here for that one, the building owner was here.
And that goes back to what I've said 100,000 times. We will say to them, we really need you to maintain your property. As with plants and flowers and cut the grass and all that stuff, please, it brings people in, it attracts people to not only your business, but the village. They don't do that, there's no enforcement, our hands are tied. And that's one of the things that was to be addressed with this sign code. And that, or even the village president was here and even said, we're going to be doing that, more of that. So this is to Brian's point, but this is to the point we've been talking about for a long time.
Long time.
It's not just the landscape, the exterior, it's even following the things that you're supposed to do according to the code. When we say you
Yes,
can't
yes.
do- I remember Chase had this big banner on top of their building.
Yeah.
And it'd been up for a long time. And we brought that up at one of our meetings, and who's supposed to be doing all that?
And Domino's.
Yeah.
Code enforcement.
That's the same thing with the code too, just in general.
Huh?
If it has no teeth.
Yeah.
Or nobody,
And
That's code enforcement, those are code enforcement.
Yeah.
Code enforcement.
but nonetheless.
And again, we did insofar as signs are concerned, we tried to strengthen the language and what was in that construction and maintenance standard section. It's
Yes.
much longer, it's much clearer about what is damaged, what is not.
And it is.
Right, and so that way it's at least can help enable code enforcement to better understand, better look for those types of things with signs. But obviously some of that just becomes a matter of how do we deploy staff or code enforcement staff.
That's what it boils down to.
Didn't Brian say deputize us?
Well, so,
No.
Yeah, I know we can't do that, but it's.
yeah, but there is a different way. Well, there is a different.
Well,
There's potentially many different ways. I wrote something out, I can't find it right now, but it basically says. We ought to have a report to the village board twice a year.
Who's we?
A group that is formed. That includes the appearance committee, the beautification committee, the. Police department, the zoning and whatever, it's zoning and
why
whatever.
the police department?
Because we have many times asked for places to have. Visibility into their.
Oh, that, yeah.
And again, I shouldn't say again, and. I wrote something down, but that doesn't mean that it's, gospel by any means, but. I think there's a process that we need to sort of think about and get. Done.
Got something?
Oh, the mic's not plugged in.
Oh,
So I hope I'm talking loud enough that member Gonser's mic is catching me, because
well, since we.
There we go.
Recording.
continue, my apologies.
No, it's okay.
Do we have to start over?
No, please no.
We're not
Remember
gonna-
what you
No.
said, Brian?
Oh, no, not me.
Can you repeat that, Brian?
Unfortunately, I could, but I'm not going to.
So a report that says what? Mister.
Prior to October 15th, this is what I wrote, okay, so we can hack the heck out of it. Prior to October 15th, proposal will be submitted to the village board for adoption to create a multi-organizational task force to do a twice annual survey of the village. To assess compliance to this updated sign ordinance code and other village requirements to include, but not be restricted to, landscape plans, etc. Task force will include village employees, i.e. building department, economic development, with police department, building department. Plus members drawn from the beautification committee, appearance committee, zoning and planning commission. Okay, that's what I've got. And again, it's a stalking horse to say, no, we don't want to do that. What is it gonna have? What's the next step? You know, is it gonna have any guts to it?
I just have a question of the, like, kind of the logistics of it. So you said, members drawn from the different commissions and committees and things, how would they be selected?
Oh, God, if you only have one question about the logistics of it, I'm impressed.
Well, that's my first
Because
question.
I've got about 20 of them. And my answer is, I don't know. I mean, I could create one, I could tell you some standards right now, but I think that's you know, a joint decision as opposed to.
That might be the village president's decision.
I would guess it would be.
That would be fine with me.
It would almost have to be a new committee. That
Mhm.
solely looks at compliance with the code.
So I think what Brian's saying is, this might need to, if we were to do this, this would need to be included in the code. Or somewhere in here, that commission, they wouldn't be a commission, it'd be a committee. That committee is set up in order to enforce, see if there's compliance
Yeah.
with what we've written up. Is that where you?
It
Yeah.
would be-
Yes, I had a very difficult time with that word, enforcement compliance, because
Compliance, it's.
you
I
know.
believe any new committee is in our municipal.
Mhm.
code of ordinance.
Section 2,
Appointed
yep.
by the village president. And it would be, you're talking about another committee, like a committee that,
Okay, and
Solely
is that
focused
an
on-
insurmountable problem?
I don't know. if it's
Or let's put it this way,
I don't think it's insurmountable.
I think there is general understanding of what we all have wanted, what we all have identified, and that is some teeth to the code, ordinance, plan, everything.
Some teeth to the enforcer.
Yes.
Yeah.
However that gets done.
I will say I am kind of getting tired. I'm sick of it every meeting, and we talk about it every meeting, yet it doesn't appear as if things get enforced.
Would-
Maybe they do and we don't know about it. I don't know.
Would this be something for, again, the commission to essentially, I don't know, write a letter, make a recommendation to the board in this? I mean, it's.
I suppose that the creation of such a committee would ease our burden of having to keep bringing up these issues, because our job is to simply approve and make sure things adhere to what the village has approved for us to approve, right? We're basically the enforcers in terms of code, but the enforcers in terms of presentation after the fact. Like, once we approve their signage, we need that second round to maintain their signage, maintain their properties, right? So
And
that doesn't currently exist in terms of having an entire committee that's a compliance committee. So we approve things, but then we don't personally, as a committee or a commission, follow up on it. So in that regard, we do need some sort of, I don't know, maybe it's just a better process. Like, if we do find something that we approve this, but they're doing this, maybe there needs to be a clearer policy or process in terms of we submit an issue, it goes to this route and we know that it's going to be addressed, rather than we bring it up at our meeting and ends up in the minutes and maybe just gets lost in the shuffle. Is that something that we could probably consider?
I think so. I almost feel like we need to have input from the village president on this, input from the building inspector on this, so. Although I don't know if that's our charge.
Yeah, my one could,
No,
and
it wouldn't be,
yeah, my one concern is just as a reminder, the. When there's code enforcement done, when we say there's a property that has severe maintenance issues and needs to be cited. That's a police action that that can end up with court action, that ends up as a legal matter. And so it's not as simple as- Right. Right, no, but it's
not police.
right, well, it's a part of our police power, that's what I was
Yeah,
going
that's
for.
what you're trying to say.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say, it's part of our police power, it's not our police department, it is code enforcement.
Yeah, that's.
But that's what I was trying to say, is it's part of police power, so that gets tricky when it comes to, like, every one of those letters that goes out. Can end up with, again, citations with legal action related to it, and that could be, it's, we wanna
I
be.
think what you're saying is we need more eyes on the street.
Yeah.
We need more people to see things and enforce them. We have one staff member that does commercial code enforcement.
Yeah, well, the
And-
fire department does it as well. When they're out, they'll
They
let
do?
Bob know, but it always gets passed down to one code enforcement inspector.
And that's probably the.
Who's got a lot of other things on plate.
Right.
Well, since the code enforcement just started 2 weeks ago, and so far that inspector has been concentrating on commercial, period. They've done nothing but commercial unless we send them out to a complaint.
Is there a written code for commercial, just like,
Not
you know,
specifically for commercial,
residential?
They just follow the property maintenance code.
Okay, so checking for grass but what
Well,
about,
Grass, but they always do trash. They're getting ready
Okay.
to do the inspections for the business lighting on the signs, the parking lot lights, all that kind of
Okay.
stuff. But they do all the property maintenance over there for any of the commercial, the parking lots, all of it.
but it is all in writing,
Yeah,
just like
Mhm.
people can
Yeah,
see,
either between
residents
the
can
building
see what's,
The HMC code or the actual IPMC, and then with the amendments that we have.
okay.
So do we have, no one mentioned that letters go out or.
Yes.
Should go out. Do we have an idea of how many go out in a year? I mean, is it 5 or?
It-
100?
It's like hundreds.
Obviously, like in the winter, we don't send out as much because there's things that just can't be done by the weather. But during the summer, it's not unusual for us to send out over 150 letters in 1 week.
Oh.
It all depends on, yeah, all depends on how well things are being maintained, what they see, how nitpicky we wanna be.
Yeah.
So,
Is this something that can be done if we even wanted to address this? Outside of what we're working on today?
Yes,
In other words, yeah, this can be
Yeah.
something that
yeah, I think it's outside of the.
every,
Yeah.
Mhm.
somehow the village looks at this, considers it. And we talk about it after everybody's had a chance to digest it, more than just this tonight, because I need to think about this, which is not, and it's a good idea. For another meeting soon, not like a year from now, because we have got something soon. Do we need to talk to the village president about this?
Yeah, I think, this is definitely outside of what we can do with the sign code.
Mhm.
It sounds like it's not a question of the rules being written, it's a question of them being enforced in the field. And so
Mhm.
that's kind of a different issue than looking at writing new code.
Yeah,
It sounds like it's more of amping up the manpower of the enforcement code,
Yes.
not
that's exactly-
seasonal. It has to be year round to cover the commercial part of it, because that's
So,
the year
outside
round.
of seasonal, because we do have code enforcement specifically in the summer. When they finish, which is usually end of October, beginning of November, then it falls on the building inspector.
Okay,
can you give this to Noah and Angela and see if they can, this, and they can.
Yeah, that would be
Yeah,
good.
Yeah, sure.
My intellectual property.
Yeah,
you got a copyright on that?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's right.
Okay,
So
so.
we can share that. I mean, we can, again, we're happy to take that.
Attribute him though.
Yeah,
Screenshot.
of course.
That's what cell
course.
phones are for.
Initial every page, so you gotta,
All right.
All right.
Nope.
Sorry, anything got me answer, sorry. I was actually, what I have here are smiley faces and compliments. 'Cause I like the way.
Oh, good.
Okay.
I like the addition of section E modifications. I like the way that was put together. I think it's terrific. There's one little thing on page 60, E, sign abandonment. It says any sign advertising or describing a business that is no longer in operation or use, no longer present, or is no longer present. Should that be the word is?
No longer in operation or use, that is no longer present, yeah.
Is, okay, that, I mean, that's just a typo thing. It's not, that's not at all a big thing. However, who knows? It's also-
This is the time to catch those things,
Yeah.
for sure.
And you know, adding words like will be instead of the words might be and maybe where we had requested that is important. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Great.
Good.
All right,
Next,
I'm gonna quick grab a bottle of water here.
you want to take a quick break, guys, or no? I don't need.
I think we have 3 more slides. Beautiful. All right, non-conforming signs. This was pretty straightforward. Most of our discussion related to the removal of sign amortization requirements, which we did do. Which was the removal of non-conforming signs after a set or after a certain period of time. We said 10 years. We decided that was too punitive. And decided that, again, our sign abandonment code could just be strengthened. And then again, we are, what am I trying to say? We will find other channels, I suppose, to meet the goal of reducing nonconformities, which can happen over time as businesses change and things like that. Well, this would be, I think it was 60.
60. Thank you. Thank you.
59 or maybe 59 and 60.
Okay, yes, it's fair.
So and then again, just, we simplified that language around major and minor damage. We had that separated into different categories like major damage repair, major damage cost, minor damage repair, minor damage cost. And we just simplified those down to be a lot more clear. Just I think 2 bullets, major damage or major damage needing repair, minor damage needing repair.
So,
Yes.
on sign abandonment, there are signs currently that businesses have been going for years. Will this affect them? Because they were existing in that state when the code's adopted.
So actually, it's currently in the existing code that when a business closes, the sign does have to be removed.
But they aren't, right?
Right.
Okay.
So even the change in this code, it's not gonna
Mhm.
change the fact that they get to stay there, but they still have to come down.
Well, this says the village would take it down.
Yes, that's a big change.
So would the village now take down the signs that are up there currently?
Guess that becomes a non-conforming question of if something was existing before the date of the adoption of the ordinance. Does it fall under this purview?
I think it's written in there that they are
It's written
exempt.
Yeah.
Even not.
It says all signs erected before the date of adoption should not conform, shall be considered non-conforming signs.
I would have to chat with Bob about that.
That is a good question. I don't know if we wanna. As it's written, it's any sign that was erected before the date of the adoption. I would say. That's probably not how we wanna approach it. It should be,
Probably grandfathered them in, right?
yeah, those should be grandfathered in. Those should not apply. It should only be signs that are erected after.
I would like the best.
It
example
might be
would
just
your-
as simple as an addition of a sentence of this
I think
does
we
not
just take out
apply.
words.
Okay, so,
Yeah,
Can you-
confused.
you-
I'm sorry, go ahead.
yeah, can you review that so everybody's clear, please?
Yeah, I think what we wanna see is the opposite of what. right?
Where is
Here,
it?
I've got the text. I can put it up on the screen.
Yeah.
here.
of course, text.
Yep.
Not that screen. I didn't see it. It's gonna be.
Yeah. So I think page 59.
59.
Okay, let's take a look.
The first
Oh,
sentence.
okay,
All signs erected before the date of adoption which do not conform to the regulations of section of this shall be considered non-conforming signs.
right.
So that means all signs that don't conform or non-conforming. I don't think that's how we can say that.
I think that,
That would make every sign that doesn't conform to this non-conforming and have to comply.
well, that would be a non-conforming sign, because if it's some, if it was conforming under the old code, let's say, for example. The code changes and it's now not conformant with the current code, it was erected before the date of the code. That it was adopted, it would be a non-conforming sign. And all this is saying is just defining what a non-conforming sign is.
I think we need to.
Yeah, that's too bad.
Okay, I think that's the language we use in our zoning ordinance, just with structure instead of sign.
Well,
Yeah.
So I'll repeat something that member Shefky said like 3 meetings ago, and that is. That sign above. The Russos, and it's, come on. I mean, that's. Ugly as sin, it just sends the wrong message. I think.
Which sign?
On the strip center bar, Russo's used to be,
You just had a picture, no, I had a picture of
The
it.
Pearson's Bakery sign.
and it used to- yeah.
Pearson's Bay, thank you very much.
Well, that's subjective. I think that if we say suddenly you have to take it down versus it's
Hmm.
not it.
Right.
On a case
That
basis.
buzz is on, Bob's, pet peeve list.
It's been out of business for 5 years.
Yes,
But to what end it's on this list, that's.
for lack of maintenance.
Okay,
The
but
property manager is not maintaining the property to any standard, and it's hit the point where the fire chief has determined that he is not approving any business to move in there until the property manager or owner brings the property up to code.
Good.
And that does include removing the sign for the Pearson's Bakery.
you can just not be in any hurry to get it done.
Yeah, because it was that one, and then
Yes, 5 more years.
they were actually in front of the commission a handful of years ago to do replace the soffit and fascia, and they never did it.
You remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. There's several other issues over there, those are the two big ones.
Angela, I know one thing it should say is that it should be considered as legal non-conforming signs. That's the missing word. I was reading through it 100 times, and so it's
So read it with the way you think.
Yep, so it'll be all signs erected before the date of adoption, which do not conform to the regulations of section 4410 of this chapter being the zoning ordinance. Shall be considered as legal non-conforming signs.
Big difference.
That clarifies it.
And then that would make, then B makes sense, because then these are the limitations applied to said legal non-conforming signs. And then damage down below under number 4 starts to say, these are scenarios where if there's damage or done to a sign, here's when it can or can't be replaced.
Yeah.
So it'd be legal non-conforming signs.
I think the section of the zoning code says that this section regulates land, buildings, or structures that on the effective date of this ordinance, which is chapters derived, are used for purposes that are not permitted. And then it goes on to explain legal and non, yeah. We'll figure that out.
Bring this back again next month, or
Small thing.
okay. Yeah, what else we got? All right. Noah?
We have other issues waiting in the.
No, it's just that.
Gives us a chance to get together, enjoy each other's company.
That's.
Make you remember the commission.
Welcome to the club.
Supposed to bring donuts next.
I
Oh,
will.
I forgot.
So,
Nobody
I
told me.
got 2 other signs here.
Yes,
Oh, there it is.
What's wrong with them?
so they're pole signs in the B2 district, which would be they would be legal non-conforming. They were previously constructed at in the B2 district. We don't permit B2 or pole signs in the B2 district. So those would be legal non-conforming signs.
So the cancer support center, are they just gonna throw that up on the building, on the side of the building, or
It could,
how's that gonna work?
They could cut the pole down and close it with metal. Make
Like
it
a
a
monument.
monument sign, yeah.
Mhm.
Lots about.
they may, I mean, that actually could work. I don't know the final size of the sign panel though, but if it fit within the size requirements, it could do that.
I think they just-
All right,
Until there's another
All right.
tornado that comes through.
what's next?
All right, so for other changes to code requirements, we again just changed may language to shall language in the maintenance and construction standards, just based on requests from the commission. We just clarified requirements for the illumination when you have illuminated or ECM board signs. We just added some maintenance requirements, just that say those boards, so those ECM boards need to be turned off until they're repaired and then can be turned back on. That's just using language we already have enforced for other approvals for ECM board signs in the past, just codifying that in our construction and maintenance standards. We added a couple, yes.
It's one question. You know, in the past, when we've been discussing ECM signs that we've approved, we sort of had this discussion about 15 seconds, kind of the 15 second. Is that, do we like that 15 seconds, and should it be codified, I guess?
15 seconds. I know we have an 8-second, we had something where it was a minimum of 8 seconds. We did change that language.
I don't remember.
Maybe I'm just,
It was 8 seconds.
so 8 seconds is what?
For image duration, how long an image has to
Must stay
stay.
there for at least 8
Yep,
seconds.
and then it
yes.
changes to the next screen.
Otherwise, it's just too.
Yep. And we did fix our error that it said no, that the limit was 8 seconds
Yeah,
rather than.
I'm sorry, is that in here?
The change was made, that now it's a minimum of 8 seconds, not a maximum of 8 seconds, which would be a lot of changing very fast.
Yeah, but it's written down here.
Correct.
Thank you.
All right, we added new definition, just a handful of new definitions, just if there was a term in the process of talking about, say, ECM board signs, things like that. If there's a term, we just, for clarity, just added a term or two into the definitions. And then those graphics you'll see for our sign procedures as well. So you'll see flow charts now in those procedures that show exactly who's doing what when, and just kind of going down the board of showing what happens if you approve, if you deny, kind of what happens on those flow charts. And that is a summary of the changes that were made for this code.
All right, that's a lot. Thank you. All right, so additional comments, input, anything that the commissioners have regarding anything we've seen tonight that they've noticed in any of the writings. Commissioner Banks. Commissioner Sheffield.
General question. Is the sign code any different than what comparable communities have? I mean, I don't want to see us have a sign code that people will say, we're not going to move our business in the Homewood because.
Right.
But I understand the importance of have the code.
So we did, we
Don't answer the question by saying great. Don't say like great.
no. We looked at 13 other communities in the process of developing the sign code. So we chose kind of 13 communities, everything from Tinley to Downers Grove to Elmhurst, different communities to Oak Park, communities that have done sign codes since ours was approved. And we've looked at those carefully for just what their standards are for different types of signs, for how they organize their sign code, things like that. Ours is not a carbon copy of those, but it does bring us into a pretty close alignment with the standards that you'll find in a lot of those. A lot of the sign ratios you'll see, like an example would be like wall signs, 1 square foot per 1 linear foot for downtown signs is pretty standard, or is very close to standard in those communities. I don't think you'll see developers coming to this code and seeing things that are wildly out of place from others well-developed sign codes in other municipalities that really care about design in Chicago.
Have you heard any jurisdictions getting pushback on their sign codes?
We have not yet sent out our sign code to other
Not
municipalities.
ours, theirs.
Oh, theirs? I would have to go back into the notes for their or
I'm sure you
either
would.
their review process or
I'm sure you would
get more.
remember that they said, yeah, we're getting our developers saying we're not moving into Oak Park because of your sign.
right. I'm not aware of any concerns related to that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Quirk?
Yeah, can we turn to page 38? I must just be dense or something like that, because I don't understand what this says.
I could do a walkthrough of it really quick if we'd would be helpful. So it's
So this is in a, I'm sorry, this is in a shopping center, shall we say?
sure, yep.
And you got three tenants right in a row,
Mhm.
all with, okay, go ahead.
So basically what this is doing is just explaining the lot frontage and the differences between, say, a lot frontage reference in the code and a tenant frontage. So which are used in different places in the code, depending on what types of signs we're talking about. A lot of our freestanding signs will use lot frontage because you're thinking about the lot as a whole where it might be placed. Our wall signs, things like that, you're thinking more about tenant frontage. So the on the graphic, you will see that the lot, just the difference between the lot frontage. They used a corner lot so they could illustrate what it would be on a corner lot. So you'll see those two lot frontages there, 1 and 2. And then the individual tenant frontages are just highlighted as number 3. The difference is that the corner tenant, so a tenant that has frontage on 2 streets there, that would be tenant frontage would be measured as both sides of the building that are facing that public street. And so an example that you could apply this almost 1-to-1 on is the stretch of buildings like the Ridgewood, Primos, Twisted Q, that stretch. You could imagine those as these 3 buildings, and this would be the same orientation. So Twisted Q, 1 frontage, Primos, 1 frontage. Ridgewood has these 2 frontages that come around, and so signage is measured then accordingly on those.
Yeah, how about 3 frontages? 3 frontages, we got, Dave's is a perfect example. You know, they claim to have 3 frontages, right? South.
They have 1,
The 3. The back, they put a sign in the back.
but we only
They got
define
3
that
signs.
frontage as a public street or right away,
Oh,
so it's only 1.
Yeah.
Which is why they've asked for more signage. Aspen Dental was another example of that, an older variance case from a number of years ago. Aspen Dental or Dave's Hot Chicken?
Dave's.
Yes, we approved a variance to allow them to do it,
They couldn't do it if we didn't approve.
right?
Commissioner Clark?
No.
I have one question on page 41. 41(3)(a). It says historical plaques shall be located on a wall face. I immediately thought of the not Gottschalk House. What's the one that came for
The Gottschalk House,
is it the Gottschalk
the
House?
one downtown,
No. The
oh, the
one.
Dornbach House,
Thank you, that.
okay.
Thank you.
Historical Society just called that.
Right, Historical Society, there we go. They asked us for a sign that says museum that's now on fences. Is that considered a historical? That's not considered a historical plaque, right? That's just signage for, so
That's
people
just
know.
a sign.
No,
Okay.
yeah, so historical plaque would be, say, let's say we designate a new building as a historical landmark.
Right.
That plaque there that we mount that says whether by Village of Homewood or the state that says this is landmark, here's what it is, that's the plaque.
All right, I was just
Yep.
concerned that might affect them somehow, so, okay, cool.
Mhm.
It's like bronze looking plaques that are on buildings.
Yep. And this is sized accordingly so that those don't suddenly become some sort of non-conforming.
No, I've seen them. I
structure, so.
just want to make sure
Yep.
they're okay.
And then just to clarify, those freestanding ones, like the one that is currently at the corner of Hickory and Dixie, that's a historical sign for the freestanding sign for Dixie Highway. That would fall under historical markers here then, so that's a freestanding structure.
Okay,
So that's the main difference between those B and C, those two different sign types.
I'm crossing some things out here because we answered them as we go along, so. On page 50, this will be my last one for question. On page 53, the window signs. I'm a little confused, so. Maybe I'll use Brian's words, maybe I'm just kind of dense here, but.
53.
Yep. In the middle of this, it says, number allowed, no limit. Then it says the maximum sign area, 25% of individual transparent and 25% of total transparent. And that's for permanent window signs. How can there be no limit
So,
when there's a maximum area per signage?
right,
Yeah, that sounds, I mean, I
Well-
wouldn't have put it past somebody to try to do that.
yeah. Well, and it's scalar, like, so think about, so for example, Essence Suites did also have window signage when we were focused on the wall signs, but they also have window signage. And they put them just on the very top banner and at the very bottom of the windows. They're very narrow, they're not very wide, but they're just on the windows. If we put a limit, let's say we set a limit of 4. Well, if a building has more than 2 windows, they can't do that type of signage across the, all those windows, even if it still doesn't cover 25% of the area. So it's just essentially to say, you can put as many up as you want, you just can't cover 25% of any individual window or 25% of the whole total. But again,
Okay.
some buildings have more windows than others, and we didn't want to be overly restrictive on how we wrote that.
Do we need to make that clearer? Maybe everybody got it, it's just me.
Mhm.
See if there's other language that might.
And that's all.
That's gonna be interesting to see how that plays out, given that. So many of the existing window signs don't meet this 25%.
Again, it was 25% before.
It was.
Yeah,
It was
Yeah,
just
well.
4%.
well, if you could look in clarifying that.
Mhm.
That's all I have. And that would be all we have. We cannot vote on this now, right? Because we have too many things to clarify. Yes, no,
You can vote on it.
we can.
Vote with conditions, for example, you could condition specific sections that need to.
But if you prefer not to.
Well, I'm just, seems like there's,
So we have-
I'll be happy to. put it
So I think
out.
we have 3 major outstanding areas, the non-conforming language in section A of the non-conforming section. The window sign limit, number limit, and then we had the language on enforcement or the abandoned signs, right? How we wanted to treat that. Were there any others that come to mind?
I think there were any clarifications that were not questions on regulations. Sorry.
It was more clarifying language.
All right, I'm writing.
Could it be condition, I mean, you could approve with conditions that it be clarified to say what you want it, what the commission wants it to say, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, so. So I would say something like, recommend a motion to approve the case, blah, blah, blah. Proposing amendments to texting to the text of the zoning ordinance including clarifications as discussed by the commission. Yes,
Or incorporating.
Just wanna do it
clarification, yeah. Yep, incorporating.
Changes.
including incorporating. What did I do for a living? Okay, all right. Well then, is there anything else before we get to this? Anybody else? All right, then, do I have a motion to approve case 2501 Village Sign Code Update. Proposing amendments to the text of the zoning ordinance, including incorporating clarifications as discussed by the Appearance Commission this evening. Number one, amendment of the zoning text section 44-4-14 to establish murals and public art installations as an accessory structure subject to accessory use and structure requirements. Two, amendment of the zoning text of section 44-07 to establish development review procedures for sign permits, sign variances, comprehensive sign plans, appearance reviews, and public art and mural reviews. And three, establishment of section 44-10 of the zoning ordinance to A, set standards for permitted, prohibited, and exempt sign types. B, allow for the regulation of permitted signs and sign structures in the zoning ordinance. C, allow for the regulation of temporary signs in the zoning ordinance. D, set requirements, standards, and modification authority for comprehensive sign plans. E, establish definitions, limitations, and procedures for legal non-conforming signs. F, create new construction and maintenance requirements for permitted signs. And G, establish definitions for terms related to the regulation of signs and sign structures. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
First was Sheffield and second, Banks,
Yes.
member Banks.
Are you gonna say something?
Oh, I was gonna, I did, oh no, I was gonna, that was the roll call. I was about to start the roll call. Go ahead. Yep.
Member Banks.
Aye.
Member Sheffield.
Aye.
Member Quirk,
Yes.
member Clark.
Aye.
Member Johnson. Aye. Chairman Brian.
Aye. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, nice work.
All
Thank you.
right. And I would like to thank the village, and I would like to thank you guys, Noah.
Yeah.
And anybody else who was involved in this, please pass on the sentiments, how much work you put in. I know it was amazing amount of time and it was so very well done.
It shows.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you very much. All right, so the next order of business is old business. Anybody have any old business they want to discuss? New business. Does anybody have any new? Well, actually, no, I do have two questions for under old business. What's going on with Starbucks by Ollie's? We voted on that a long time ago. And there's
By where?
nothing. By Ollie's,
Oh,
nothing. All right. And what about,
anything by Ollie's? There was another building.
yeah, there was another one there too. Nothing.
What about the bagel place?
Yes, the American Bagel Plaza Center, that is currently, we have proposals for that building, the village owns it, and so we're looking at 3 proposals, reviewing them for the board to vote on which is selecting one of them to be the owner. They're on our website if you want to see them.
Does that mean we're selling it?
Isn't Rabbit still looking to possibly?
Rabbit.
Yes,
Yeah.
And two developers. Right.
Yeah, Rabbit was on that a long time ago.
Anything on Raising Cane?
Nothing.
Okay,
Raising Cane, what was that?
next to Best Buy.
Well, actually,
It's in
I
the,
believe that there was an issue with the water main going through that site, and so they may be looking at a different location, we're not.
There's rumor they're looking at Freddy's, but we have no confirmation of that.
What happened with Freddy's?
Freddy's is still there, but they're closing all of their, Chicagoland regional places. I don't think they did well here, for whatever reason. They've already closed the one in Orleans and maybe.
The one in Orland's gonna close it would close before the Bucky's closed.
Hard to compete against Portillo's.
Yeah,
And what about 1313 175th Street, that T-shirt place, that whatever that it's just sitting there.
Just sitting there.
There's nothing from them about starting their work and oh boy. Wow.
And how
Okay.
about I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
how about the gas station building across from Lassen's?
pizza place.
I'm sorry.
the pizza place.
Yeah.
Big Rockets, yes, they are actually, we are working with them to close on the property so that they can start their projects. That will be started moving forward soon.
Any time frame, like by the end of
Well,
summer or something?
we're- It depends on the environmental, we're working right now to get for the remediation letter and to get those terms straightened out, but everything else is in place for them to work on it.
And the donut shop. Donut shop,
Old fashioned donut. We haven't heard anything. Building department hasn't been in there in months to do any kind of inspections.
He's working very slowly.
you got any? You got any?
All right, I have nothing else. I would like,
Thank
motion to adjourn at, 7:21. Motion, anybody, please?
Motion.
Second,
Second.
all in favor, say aye. Anybody opposed? Heck, no. All right, now,
Hey, maybe.
off the record, people, now that we're closed in the micro, this is.
Well, it's just, I'm getting there, here, got this.